Time to talk about a reptilian race that had every reason to return. And despite comic books and audio dramas giving us tantalizing glimpses of their empire, their culture and their potential, they've been left rotting in the vaults of Who history. And let's be honest, with the current state of political correctness in media, the chance of their return looks as slim as a Cyberman shedding a tear. That's right, we're looking at the Draconians, the honor-bound, samurai-inspired warrior race introduced during the Third Doctor's era. They had class, they had gravitas, and they had the Master manipulating them because of course he did. Welcome to the Snake Pit, where we're full of bile and venom. I'm your host, Snake Daemon, and today we're diving into the one race that should have come back with fire, claws, and honor, but instead got sidelined by space frogs and blue crystals. The Draconians' interstellar empire was a monarchy led by an emperor and his court of nobles. They weren't just your average sci-fi reptiles, these were noble ceremonial warriors with a rigid class system and deep-rooted traditions. Former emperors, ominously known as the Deathless Emperors, were kept in orbit of Draconia because nothing says don't screw this up like a literal ring of dead monarchs watching from space. Draconian etiquette was steeped in protocol. Nobles bowed and kissed the emperor's claws before speaking, offering up the phrase, "My life at your command." Lower classes and women weren't even allowed to speak to the emperor, which, let's be honest, would get Twitter frothing with rage in about 0.3 seconds today. But different cultures, different rules, and that's part of what makes them so damn interesting. By the time of the Galactic Federation, things had softened a little. Women had more rights and the once immovable traditions began to evolve. But make no mistake, Draconia was never a free-for-all democracy. Freedom of speech was reserved for the elite, and the idea of crying or showing emotion as a man was borderline blasphemous. Samurai honor, feudal classism, and political posturing all in one scaly package. Their society was visually striking too. No straight lines in architecture, homes made of curved paper walls reminiscent of Japanese Fusuma, black robes with shoulder pads that could take your eye out, and warriors carrying swords forged from the finest steel in their galaxy. They even brewed their own courage-inducing liquor, Branka, which made you think you were brave but in large doses could kill you. The Draconians were a society of paradoxes, strength wrapped in ceremony, brutality masked with honor. So why haven't they returned? Well, the truth is, they have, just not on screen. Big Finish's Paper Cuts is a brilliant deep dive into Draconian tradition and mystery. The comics gave us glimpses too. Fugitive being a standout, they've been referenced in the Pandorica Opens and the Satan Pit, but still no full-blown return. Why? Probably because modern writers are terrified of portraying a civilization where women were once silenced, emotion was weakness, and order was enforced through absolute power. It's the same creative cowardice that neutered the Silurians into smooth-talking space lizards with zero menace. Modern who tends to flatten complexity for fear of offending someone somewhere. But what if they grew up? Here's the pitch. What if we got a proper Draconian story that, really leans into their rich, contradictory culture? A story that doesn't shy away from their patriarchal past or militaristic society, but instead uses it as fertile ground for drama, conflict, and growth. Something that actually respects world-building instead of scrubbing it clean to appease the outraged crowd. The TARDIS doesn't land at the right moment, it rarely does. This time the Doctor arrives late, far too late. A diplomatic crisis has already unfolded on Draconia. The human ambassador, a tough-as-nails woman known for her unflinching honesty and refusal to bow to outdated etiquette, has been arrested by the Imperial Court. The charge? Subversion. She's accused of inciting rebellion among the lower classes, disrespecting the Emperor, and violating sacred protocol by speaking in his presence. What's worse, her trial is already underway, and Draconian trials aren't about facts, they're about honor. The Doctor only learns of these events after the fact. piecing them together through flashbacks, security logs, and hushed whispers in court. The trial is long, drawn out, and held in the full gaze of both Draconia's nobility and a watching galaxy, because one wrong move could lead to war. A war narrowly avoided generations earlier during the Dalek-instigated Earth Draconia crisis. The wounds may have healed, but the scar remains. And yet, this is no external manipulation this time. This is Draconia facing itself. Modern human ideals, equality, freedom of speech, dignity across all classes and sexes, have seeped into Draconian society through simple contact, not subterfuge. Workers have stopped bowing. Female citizens are quietly organizing. Even young nobles are beginning to question whether the rigid castes and ceremonial obedience have a place in the new galactic age. But the Draconian court sees a foreign infection. So here comes the doctor. Now, he didn't get there in time to stop the trial, but, well, he did get a summons, just, a tad too late. And here's the twist. The doctor reveals he's actually a noble of Draconia. Yep, you heard that right. The 15th Emperor himself granted him the title, as a thank you for services rendered in the past. Not a ceremonial thing, mind you. It's legal, which, oddly enough, makes him the only outsider who can step in here without turning this whole mess into a full-blown diplomatic disaster. The doctor, well, he's got a foot in both camps. On one hand, he's a unit veteran and stands for Earth's defense. On the other, he's a bona fide member of the Draconian aristocracy, tied to their traditions, but not exactly tangled up in their politics. So in the end, he's the one person both sides can actually trust, or at the very least tolerate. But navigating this trial means walking a knife's edge. The doctor can't just solve this, He has to respect Draconian law, even when it's, well, pretty brutal. He can't storm the courtroom or manipulate outcomes. Every gesture, every word must be weighed. This is diplomacy, this is theater, and honestly, this is survival. To complicate matters, he begins to suspect not all the humans on Draconia are innocent. There is a conspiracy, but not the one the court thinks. A human faction has been stirring revolution, but not for freedom or rights. They're aiming to destabilize the monarchy and install a federation-aligned puppet state, giving them direct access to Draconian mineral rights and weapons research. The ambassador, she's the scapegoat, a loud, inconvenient obstacle. So, as the doctor digs deeper, with a little help from a low-born Draconian clerk who secretly dreams of social change, the story builds up to this final moment. Not one of action, but, well, of rhetoric. There's a last-minute appeal before the Emperor himself. The doctor invokes his noble right to speak, defends the ambassador's honor in, honestly, the most formal and dangerous way possible, and then dares the court to see change not as a weakness, but as, a new kind of honor. Here's the thing. A society absolutely steeped in the rituals of strength now has to learn that mercy, well, it's not surrender. Listening isn't subservience either. And if they don't get it, if the ambassador is executed, then yeah, war is inevitable. Look, this isn't about good versus evil, it's about tradition versus evolution. You've got a culture basically tearing itself apart from the inside, while outside forces are, let's say, sharpening their knives. Only the Doctor can bridge that gap, not because he's a Time Lord, but because, really, he's both inside and outside the conflict. A noble and an alien, a soldier and a rebel, a man of peace walking into a political crucible. And time, as ever, is running out. Thanks for dropping by the Snake Pit, where we thrive on untapped potential and lost opportunities. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell like the video, and leave your opinions in the comments, where naturally I won't read them. Until next time, stay venomous.